They're talking already.
I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. Got little pots of pine spread out all over the lot 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico. Stick it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need to breathe. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. Keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I can't tell my boss or I'll get fired. I don't grow much, just what I use. I work all day, and when I'm through, I smoke some marijuana from my yard. Now the policeman, he wants to talk to me. He says, how you gonna smoke up all that weed? He says, money's what you're in it for. Don't you know we're in a war? Come, go haul your ass downtown with me. I said, hey man, what is it to you? How do I infringe on what you do? Well, I beg your pardon if you're offended by my garden, but I just can't grow Prozac in my yard. So I grow my own medicine in my yard. I give some to my neighbor for his harm. Share it with my grandma who keeps it from her son, 'cause we all know that stuff's against the law. Now there's nothing growing in my yard. 'Cause cops will call my land and both my cars. Now I have to buy my pot from a teenager in the parking lot who's growing marijuana in his yard. Oh, anyone can grow it in their yard. Say I can show you how, it ain't hard. Never mind the president, let's overgrow the government and all grow marijuana in our yard. Let's grow some marijuana.
Okay, this is Joe for Pot Talk, making a special appearance here. And we want to talk about, me and Paula want to talk about, it's mine, about the TV studio down in here in Woodstock. We've been trying to get people to do something about the TV studio. We've been trying to get the town board to bring the equipment up to par, so that it's user friendly.
Or even up.
Right, or even up, so it's user friendly, which it is not. And we have found out over from studying what's been going on with public access TV all over the country. They shut down public access out in California. They shut it out in Ohio and Michigan, which we're gonna
Flint, Michigan.
Flint, Michigan, which we're going to have Lydia on in a little while, who's going to talk about that and how they've been doing it. And is when they want the big companies to be able to take over, move in and take what used to belong. Public access belongs to the people. But how they get the big corporations to come in and raid public access is first they let the studio run down to the point that the producers can no longer use the studio. So then what they do is when no more producers are using the studio, they then sell the rights to some money corporation. Somebody buys the rights and takes over public access. and then there's
They
no...
sell the rights because they said that the rights have been abandoned. If you
Right.
want to call it rights, I would say the space
Right.
or the traffic.
Right. That's the way they do it. They let the studio run down to the point that the producers cannot use the studio anymore, and then after the studios and no producers are using the studio, then they sell it off for a profit and that's happened in Flint, Michigan. It's happened in Ohio. It's happened out in California. It's happening, except we're fighting a case right now down in New York City. DeeDee Halleck started a case down there against MNN, which me and Paula have joined, and our friends Dean and Lidya Radin, who's going to call in a little while, have joined DeeDee's case. So we're fighting for free speech and public access down in New York City. But that same fight is going to be up here real soon, and we know it because the town board has refused to keep the equipment up, and we wish you people out there would start supporting us and calling up Jeremy Wilbur and telling him you want public access studio in Woodstock to stay up and running, and you want the equipment to be user friendly. Please, people, we're begging you. We need your support. Call Jeremy Wilbur and tell Jeremy Wilbur that you want the public access station to stay up and running, and you want the equipment there to be user friendly, because we have it waiting
and up to date.
And up to date. We have waiting in the wings Gary Chekhov, who is trademarked Woodstock TV. And we believe that the town board is complicit with Gary Chekhov. This is my opinion, that the town board is complicit with Gary Chekhov, because if they kill the Woodstock public access, then they can sell the rights to the channel to Gary Chekhov. And that's what it appears to be. We can't prove it, but if the station goes down and all of a sudden Gary Chekhov buys it, remember, you heard it here first. And for you people out there that want to keep public access, it's time to stop the rape of public access. And we're fighting down in New York. We're taking it to a court battle. And if it happens here, we're going to be fighting it in court again up here. And I would prefer not to have to fight these people in court. I would prefer if you people out there in television land would stand up, and say, we want public access in Woodstock, and we want the equipment brought up to standard. We want the equipment to be user-friendly, And if you people don't stand up and we lose public access, it's because of lack of support from the Woodstock community. You got anything to say about that, Randy?
I just want to give a little bit of update from what I know about what's going on with the TV station. Every time I or anybody else try to bring up to the town board, especially when Bill McKenna is chairing the town board meetings, he says, well, that is in the hands of Rich Spool. Rich Spool is controlling everything. Now, what I've been able to learn, because very few people are being allowed in the TV studio, is that apparently Rich has gotten some sort of a new switcher to replace the device that was called the Focus. Nobody, so far as I know, has any idea what that new switcher is. Hopefully it will be a standard configuration switcher. And the other new piece of equipment is one new old JVC camera. They won't have two, because I guess they just don't have the budget for it. But apparently they have a new camera and a new switcher, and Rich Spool is wiring the whole thing. That's all.
And I would like to add, they say they don't have the budget for the Woodstock TV studio, which belongs to the community and has been used by the community for 30 years. Yet they also said, we're going to upgrade the community center. And what did they do on the upgrade of the community center? they created all the stuff in the back for the theater people. They got dressing rooms. They got a behind stage area for props and stuff like that. They got a nice stage. They got soundproofing, which the television studio does not have. They did nothing towards the front side is the community side. When people went for Christmas dinner or for Thanksgiving dinner, they didn't extend any of that so more people could fit in for the Christmas dinner or the Thanksgiving dinners. They extended it and they turned it into completely the theater. Now the theater people have, what is it? I think it's 3 60-day tie-ups on that community center, which means 60 and 60 is 120. 180 days.
Half a year.
They have the community center all to themselves. So it's obvious that all this money, they have now spent all the taxpayers' money not to make the community center more accessible to the community, but to the theater people. And the theater people that's not a community or operation. The public access TV station is community. Any person in Woodstock can go down and sign up to produce shows on the Woodstock TV station. That's any person. Now, any person in Woodstock can't put on a theater show, so that's a private organization that now got all the money all the extra money that they've spent on that community center was for the theater people, not for the community. So we really need your support to keep the public access station up and running. And I really am asking you people out there, we need your help. Please call and tell Jeremy Wilbur we want the equipment upgraded. All this, everything today is high definition cameras, but not Woodstock. The new camera that they got, it's not high def, folks. So even when they buy equipment for the station, they buy secondhand crap, and that's for sure. Any minute now, Lydia should be calling in.
So we're not saying that we're against the theater. We're just saying that if it's a private organization, it should play by the same level rules that everyone else does.
Well,
build its own building.
I'm against the theater people because the theater people.
I don't like the theater.
No, this particular group I don't like. The community center was supposed to be upgraded for the community. They didn't make it bigger so that they could fit more people in there for the Thanksgiving dinners and the Christmas dinners. That actually got a little bit smaller because the stage sticks out a little bit further than it used to, you know. So the community got less and the theater got all the rest. So I'm against that. I think that's misappropriation of the town's funds. And I've tried to look into it, and I put in a
FOIL.
Right, Freedom of Information, of which they gave me no information on the money.
Right. Right. Inches and inches of stacks
right.
and stacks of no information.
Right. They gave me 2 reams of no information. Then we said we wanted the what were those 3 things we wanted?
We wanted the charter, the bylaws, and the mission statement of the corporation, and we're being given the runaround for that.
Right, we're being
have
given
to go to some third-party archivist.
Yeah, some archive, someplace up in Albany, which we're still going to try, but we've been fighting this court case down in New York, which has kind of gotten soaked up a bunch of our time.
Soaked up.
Yeah. So come on, people. We really need your support out there.
Paula, I wanted to just let you know that Joe is not the only person now that is complaining about these issues. I've heard from several other producers and several other community group organizers who are ignoring the community center when it comes time to rent it for an event, and they complain that the reason for it is because so much time, so much block time has been sold out to the performing arts of Woodstock. And at first, when I started complaining about this, and Joe started very soon after complaining about this, the reaction we got is, what? You're going to be going after the performing arts of Woodstock? They're such a venerable organization of the town of Woodstock. You're going to lose if you go against them. And my attitude would be, well, we're complaining that they're monopolizing like they've monopolized every other venue they've ever been at. And now all of a sudden people are beginning to take what I and Joe and you are saying seriously, that it's not about the performing arts of Woodstock as a group, it's about the preferential treatment that they're receiving regarding the entire community center from the town.
And the funding, the money that people have paid for taxes. People thought, oh, the board of directors or the town board and Jeremy Wilbur are going to upgrade the community center. Everybody thought that was a good idea. Very few people realized their upgrade wasn't an upgrade for the community. Their upgrade was for the theater people. Like I said,
their upgrade was a flip.
Right. Their upgrade, no, it was a scam. They you know, they lied to you people when they said, oh, we're going to make the community center better. There's less room now for tables than there was before. And that's because the stage has been extended out a little further. So less people can now go into the Thanksgiving dinner or the Christmas dinner. And now we have a whole lot of money went into 2 dressing rooms for the theater people.
Oh, we have a call. That should be Lydia.
That should be Lydia.
104. Okay,
it's a more professional building, but it's got a huge debt that's now put on the people. I calculate about $20,000 a month to come up with that. I think we lost her, huh?
No, she's still there.
Oh, good. Lydia, can you hear us?
Are you there, Lydia?
I don't see any lights on.
Oh, no. What happened?
Oh, well, she'll call back.
To try it.
Oh, there's...
Lydia? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. We were just talking about how the community how the public access station up here in Woodstock, they're trying to sabotage it by letting it run down. Would you tell people what happened out in Flint, Michigan, how they destroyed the public access in Flint, Michigan?
Surely. Now, this was given to me by an attorney named Terry Blankard. And Terry Blankard, if you Google him, you can probably find him on the web. He is an attorney in Flint, Michigan, and he worked as the
city clerk.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah.
He worked as a city clerk, so he had the great good fortune of witness all this happen as an insider. So I called him in 2014 to see if he would help, and he was willing to help us any way he could. And he related to us, he was telling us to be strong and fight back because there apparently, according to our expert witness, Terry Blankard, there has been a corporate strategy to get rid of public access for the last, 6 to 9 years. Now, the way they do it is very clever because, for example, in Michigan, they didn't deny producers access to the public access channels. What they did, and I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong out there, listening audience, what they did was they passed a state law where there was no physical studio, there was no physical location for producers to go and make their product, which is the videos.
Which is the studio.
Right, which is the studio. So, I mean, we had, for example, in MNN, we have a physical building, a real-life building that you can go into with real-life facilitators. So you don't have to, know everything that there is to know. You just have to know a few basics to crank out, a video, right? I mean, you have to know, you can almost recipe it to get the simplest, a product out there, and then as you learn, you add bells and whistles, and you decorate it some more, and you do some more fancy-schmancy technical stuff as you learn all the different programs. But just to get started, you have facilitators, and you have computers, and you have, cameras and classes and people who will help you, and you learn from other producers, and other producers volunteer to work on each other's shows so they can increase their skills. So it's a dynamic learning environment that they took away from the folks in Flint, Michigan, because they actually got a state law. Now, this is how clever these attorneys are. The evil minions out there actually got a state law passed that said, no, we're not denying access to the cable channels. You have that. You just don't have a place to make your video. So if you want to, work in each other's basements or find a community center or,
right.
Figure that out on your own, right? Then sure, you can put up all the videos you want on well, actually, you don't even know how to do it because how would you gain access if there's no way for a facilitator to put you on, to promote you, to increase your audience? I mean, you've got this product, but what do you do with it? How do you, in our case, we would go down to the studio and I would broadcast live, or you would make a DVD or a pre-recording and you would give it to the facilitators and they would play it at, your appropriate program time. So the clever thing that they did was they just denied the tools, the physical location, and the facilitators the knowledge, and the hard the brick and mortar tools,
the equipment,
right? The equipment and everything you needed to actually make it. So naturally, what happened is that people found it too difficult. They didn't know what to do. I mean, if I had to learn Final Cut Pro. If you look at the manual for Final Cut Pro, I had one of the pro bono attorneys who was helping me out in Long Island. He's like, "How did you learn this? It's like a 3,000-page instruction manual. How did you possibly learn this?" I'm like, "Well, fortunately for us, I had a facilitator and an experienced editor who taught, Final Cut Pro 7 for Dummies, and I took the class, and I learned the most basic things in a recipe kind of way, and actually it was almost a weeding out process because if you could learn it, you were sort of better than the average bear, even though you got the dumbed down version. But if there's no facilitators, if there's no other producers to help you, if there's no physical plant, if there's no computers, there's no hardware, well then naturally there's no place to make your product, so put it home or figure out something. You're not going to make videos. And then what they were hoping for was, well, we offered the public access channels, but nobody ever gave us anything. So it's these resources are now going to waste. So we'll just take it back,
and we'll sell it to the highest bidder.
And according to I haven't researched this, so I'd like to qualify all my remarks by saying I haven't researched this, so I could be wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that's what they're trying to do down at MNN. They're trying to sell it up. We already know that they sold one channel to Al Gore, who then sold it to Al Jazeera.
Yeah, I'd like some more information about that. If that's really true, why is Al Gore of the Democratic Party buying how does he buy a public access channel without everybody knowing? And how does he sell it to Al Jazeera for God knows how, $62 million? And then how does Al Jazeera America go bankrupt, but now it's okay because they're coming back? I don't get that. Could somebody explain that to me?
And let me just jump in because out in California and in Ohio, how they killed public access was they let the studios run down until the equipment was no longer usable. And then because no public access producers were using the studios, they then sold those channels off. And that's how it happened out in California, and that's how it happened in Ohio. And And that's what they're doing here in Woodstock. The town board has let the equipment run down to where no producers right now are using the studio. And they have all the equipment there is very old. It's not user friendly. And now we have this guy Gary Chekhov, who trademarked Woodstock TV, which used to belong to the town Woodstock TV. And we believe that the town board and Jeremy Wilbur are purposely letting the studio fall apart so that they can now sell it to Gary Chekhov. Now, I don't have proof of that, but everything's lining up because that's the way it's been done in Ohio. That's the way it's been done in California. That's what happened in Flint, Michigan. That's what they're trying to do down in New York City to MNN. And it appears to be the same thing here in Woodstock.
Listen, I have a special guest who'd like to chime in. One of our if you don't mind, Joe Friendly would like to say hello. Is that okay?
We love Joe Friendly. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Wait. He's going to go on the other phone, and then he's going to say hello too, just to offer his support.
Joe Friendly had a 40-year public access show in Manhattan. It's going on for maybe over 40 years. Are you on, Joe?
I be.
How many years has your show Truth for a Change been broadcasting out of Manhattan?
Well, it started in 74. What's the arithmetic?
Wow. 74, 84, 94.
He's
41
very
years.
low. Could you talk on one phone so we can actually hear Joe?
Joe?
I'm going to hang up so that he can hear, and then when he's done, I'll pick up again.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
Lydia.
right.
Oh, I can hear okay.
You can hear okay? Can they hear you?
Well, we need to hear him loud.
Joe has a very soft voice. Try to boom it up if you can. Because
Joe, yell into the phone.
Okay, baby, I'll go and yell it.
I'm introducing
Okay,
you,
you're
Randy
good
Steele.
now.
This is Joe Friendly. Joe, this is Randy Steele. And Joe,
Hi, Joe.
Joe's an engineering kind of guy who loves sine waves and things. So Joe, you'd really appreciate just the exquisite sound that analog gives here in WIOF Woodstock 104.
Okay, I'm all for a good sound.
I know you are. I just want to say whenever I needed any help in public access, I needed a camera or something to make it happen, Joe would always be there and he'd help out. Even when we had differences of opinion politically, that never stopped Joe from supporting free speech. So my hat's always off to you for that. And I always remember what a freak you were about sound, even though it was video. Some people have said the most important thing about video is the audio.
Yeah, that's one of my proverbs, or whatever you call it. Commandments.
Yeah.
And see, that's what you miss when Joe Barton and Paula Gloria are trying to inform the Woodstock community that the public access facility, the physical plant, is being allowed to disintegrate, to fall apart, to take away public access. And so when you don't have a place where you could meet a Joe Friendly who would support you,
Right.
or a Paula Gloria who would support you, or a Dean Loren from last week who would support you, because Dean Loren and Paula Gloria have 15 years of production experience. Joe Friendly has over 41 years. Where do you go to meet people who say, oh yeah, we've done, and even at MNN, I'm sorry, that's my little nerve damage. At MNN, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, we would have people who would be part of our tech crew who had worked in mainstream media, things that you would recognize, and then circle in to keep their skills up, and then circle out into the establishment media and circle back in. They would do hot indie productions for a while. So where would you meet people who? One of the things that we learned, and this is part of the dynamic learning environment. There's at least 6 ways of getting something done. So if something, if Plan A fails in the studio, you've always got Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. So you learn to be very flexible and think on your feet, and you're intellectually engaged, but you also have the socialization of all the people there who are working to offer criticism and dynamic support. So it's not only that they're degrading free speech, But this is a huge, this is a community center with the dynamic exchange of ideas and learning. So you're actually destroying the fabric of a community by not having places like this.
You don't realize the value of a community until you've lost it. So it's good to heed those who've said things like that and not lose your community. Do you have anything to say on that, Joe? On community TV? Randy can talk about radio, how they destroyed radio. Isn't it pretty much the same thing? They would sort of flood radios with these, corporate religious stations.
Well, that too, but they also destroyed a lot of radio just by corporate manipulation. Mm-hmm. Just by saying, oh, we don't really approve of this, or by manipulating the ratings so the ratings don't come in. And in radio, usually it's ratings that determine everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one really important thing was basic service. Is that when you hooked up to the to the public right of way, the superhighway, if it's cable, it's the cable, or if you're going onto the internet, although Sidney Dean used to call that coaxial cable, the service provider is just facilitating your passage there. He doesn't own that property. And so that's why I think it's important for people to keep in mind that they pretend that they own the property. All they're doing is giving you a service to get there. So that means that basic service meant that anybody who hooked up in Manhattan would have to get public access. Now that you've got everything so splintered and there's so much confusion about IP addresses and privacy, people are just taking it as a given, all the abuse they're going through. For example, cable launched itself saying that, well, on broadcast TV, of course, you had to have ads in there because somebody has to pay for, all of the service. But now years went by and people got onto cable and they thought they were paying for the service so they wouldn't have the ads. Pretty soon the ads started creeping on. I can see at MNN how the ads are starting to creep on. At first you have things for Social Security. It looks to be pretty government-oriented. But I was watching Joe's show, Pot Talk with Joe Barton comes on at 9:30 in Manhattan at Channel 34, and I was watching that at 9 o'clock. It was one solid half hour of selling health insurance. And so, the blending of government and private corporations is just becoming so interconnected you can hardly tell the two apart. And I'm very sensitive about this because overcoming the cancer in my breast and the herbs that I was working with and the pain that I went through and what I learned as a result of doing it is that the body gets fooled, that it has that there's nothing that shouldn't be there. And so once you can get the body to understand this is a cell that's appropriate, this is a cell that isn't appropriate, then the body just goes and does its thing. But it's the tricking of what belongs there and what doesn't. So I'm feeling my discoveries lately are showing me that commercial TV is grounded in public access. So first the service provider provides the service, he hooks the customer up. And the first thing that they have is public access. Anybody, who wants to go can go. Now, initially people are going to be very hesitant to do this. I remember when I got on YouTube, all of my peers were frowning on me. They said, how could you do that? You give away your copyright and you give this and you give that. And I said, for me, I just want this information to reach people. It was a message from my heart. Now, after you start to build up traffic, now there's a commercial value to the traffic. Now, at that time, then you start to get the more polished actors and actresses and makeup people and slick editing and all of that. Pretty soon, the slickness gets to be so dazzling that you start to forget. Or if you're only looking at a message of power, then, of course, somebody who's just operating on their own isn't going to be as impressive. Now, DeeDee Halleck in one of her emails was using the word vanity producer, talking about how if you don't get the grants going, then you're going to have the type of quality that you get from vanity productions. And that's why it's so good to have Joe Friendly on the line here, because for 40 years he's been covering so many of the seminars and conferences that go on in Manhattan that would never possibly get onto a commercial station. Do you have anything to say on that, Joe? How do you never considered yourself a vanity producer, did you?
Well, I think that word is...
Loudly, Joe.
Huh?
Can you speak as loud as you can?
Wow.
Your voice is so soft. And Randy's out of the room for a minute. Did she have to let you in? Joe had to go out for a smoke.
They locked me out.
Oh, they locked you out. Okay, Joe. I was talking about vanity production. That's often...
It's a polite way of saying narcissistic.
Right.
But there was a problem that a lot of early public access was just people saying, look at me and I can talk, that sort of thing. And I have avoided putting myself on the air, so I pretty much have used public access to provide the kinds of talk that the mainstream medium systematically prevents the public from hearing, because it's basically anti-establishment, too critical of the powers that be.
And that's why we need public access. That's why we need public access.
Right.
Joe, I have a quick question. There's supposed to be a budget that maintains the equipment, and there has to be, because when the software gets old, you can't even use the software anymore. So it has to be replaced and upgraded. It's just part of routine maintenance.
No,
so when you go in front of the city council or the town board or whatever it is, and you say, you invoke the sunshine laws, and you say, I want to see the budget. Where if the studio is being allowed to fall apart and the equipment isn't being upgraded, and you're not getting the latest software, because you have to, they build into the software. You can't keep your software forever, because at some point a new version is going to come out, and then they're going to the new version is not going to be able to work on the internet for whatever you need to do. I mean, that's how they phase out the old software and phase in the new software, so they can keep making money. But
I'm glad you brought that up. We have found out up here in Woodstock, Time Warner Cable gives the town of Woodstock $127,000 every year, and the town, instead of putting it into the studio, puts it into the general fund so that they can spend it on whatever they want to spend it on.
Okay, that's fraud, because that money was intended. Time Warner Cable, from what you're saying, is meeting its obligation. It's saying, here's the money, and then the town is supposed to spend it. It wasn't intended to go into the general coffers. It was intended to maintain the public access stations. And so, how did that happen? How did the town board say, no, we were supposed to spend the money on A, but now we're going to spend the money on B?
Well,
where did it go?
It's Woodstock dirty politics. But, eventually we're going to take all these clowns to court. You know me, Lydia. Eventually we're going to take all these clowns to court on this, big time.
But I hate to tell you this. It's not you that's supposed to be doing it. It's your local prosecutor and your local federal grand jury and your local community. I mean, all you got to do is go door to door and say, well, first I would go down and ask for an accounting and say, okay, well, if this was intended,
Randy's rolling her eyes. Lydia, we couldn't even get the bylaws, the mission statement, and the charter for the corporation.
And I put in freedom.
The town.
I put in freedom of information on the money they spent on the community center, and they gave me 2 reams of paper with no answers in it.
Well, yeah. So what I would do is go
Joe
back
really
up
felt
to.
that.
Let me ask you something. They must have town hall or city hall meetings, like what, once a month?
Yeah.
Twice a month on
Tomorrow.
Tuesday.
Tomorrow.
Right. So what I would do is I would go down and usually get like 3 to 5 minutes to talk.
2 minutes.
And
2 minutes here in Woodstock. 2 minutes that they ignore. They say, well, only 5 people can have 2 minutes. And while you're talking, they're busy writing. They're ignoring anything that anybody's saying.
Yeah,
and then they don't answer any questions. and then after your 2 minutes they go, okay, we're going to move on with business. That's how the politics works here in Woodstock.
It's like an
Good,
old
so-
BAI board meeting where the board members
BAI.
used to read the newspaper.
Well, yeah, they try all those dirty tricks in Jersey City when I go down there too. So I take it to they try all that nonsense too. They used to have the public they'll put the public speakers at the back of the meeting or the front of the meeting, and then they'll every dirty trick you can think of. But it becomes so blatantly obvious after a while that we just started going door to door and telling people don't vote for this one and don't vote for that one, and you'd be surprised how effective that is.
Yeah.
So I mean, it should be easier to do in Woodstock, because didn't you say there was a place where everybody goes to get their food?
I'm getting ready to stand in front of Sunflower and collect signatures for. I'm just trying to figure out how to word the petition, but I know for the smart meters they collected 1,000, and
which the town board ignored.
yeah.
No, it's grand larceny. It's you just don't get $120,000 a year and say, piss on you, I'm going to spend it any way I want. Or we decided this or we decided that. Now it's a real issue. So what you can do is collect up your signatures that say, we want an accounting. This is the if you have to sue them for conversion, because conversion, in the tort of conversion, the burden of proof is on them, not on you. So all you have to do is go in there and, based on your pleadings, and say, we want an accounting. The town board converted this money over the past, 10 years. It's like $1 million.
And refused to give us an accounting.
Right,
Now
here
give
you
it to
go.
the court.
Now here you go. No. Listen up. The U.S. prosecutor is required. Oh, no, wait. There's a statute. No, they're required to find out where this money went, because that's what you're really describing is money laundering, and what you're really describing is very serious white collar crime. So this isn't just the town board ignores these glad flies. If the local prosecutor is part of the problem, go to the federal prosecutor. Now here's the problem with the federal prosecutor. You can try to ignore us, but if you do that, then you're part of the crime and corruption, because you're not getting these answers. And you know what happens? Now you come to court with unclean hands. And with unclean hands, you can't prosecute anybody. So, all your prosecutions go into the toilet. Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways to skin a cat.
So, we've been looking into a lot of them.
But these cats are sneaky.
Yeah.
They surely are.
Yeah. Is Joe Friendly still on there?
Yeah, still here.
What do you think about a town that gets all this money from Time Warner Cable, and for the studio up here, they put in $5,000 a year. The studio is not user friendly. Most of the equipment has been there for 20 years. They try to say it's new equipment, but I've talked to other producers who were using the studio 20 years ago, and they said it's the same equipment. They get $127,000 from Time Warner Cable, and they only put in $6,000 a year, and that's counting the electric bill for the studio.
Well, there's different names for it: stealing, misappropriation, embezzlement, and all that. But it is wrong, and at least you have public access radio to complain about it. But the more the public is informed about it, the more you can put pressure on them to do the right thing.
But you have to put pressure, Joe, on the actual people that you deal with. For example, I'm in thinking about this really deeply and seeing, how things develop and the nature of what the courts are and the town boards. I think they're all like public relation agencies that sort of create a buffer between the public and wherever these vast amounts of equity are going. How would you feel if in winning a court case it meant that Dan Coughlin would lose his house, lose his car, lose any ability...
No, lose his job.
Lose everything. How would you feel about that, Joe Friendly?
I don't quite get it. In other words, just punishment?
No, it's not even punishment. No. It's just saying it's called a collateral attack. It's just saying, here's what you've done. You took the risk in order to make a large amount of money that you could contain people by terror and by bullying and by illegal tactics, denial of ratings and no hearings and all of the things.
And renting out the public access studios for profit to
Right.
to profit groups,
Right.
and taking it away from the producers.
Right. The whole laundry list of what we've lived through, which, remember Sigmund Freud says the repetition compulsion is even stronger than the sex drive, which was strong in his teachings. In other words, we would rather continue doing what's familiar, even if it's painful, than to embrace a new reality. And I think part of this new reality is that we're so used to being, what do you say, is the word deferential when you defer to what looks like a more worthy or higher person, or somebody who has the deck stacked in his favor for just reason, because you're not educated enough, strong enough, whatever the deal is. Do you have a comment, Randy? I didn't know if you were. Okay. How would you feel that the only way you can win the case is if somebody loses their job? For sure, and then there's even more things, but they have to lose their job or give up who their boss is.
I don't quite get the gist of your question. I mean, basically what you want to happen is change in policy, and all you can do is threaten for the boss to get fired?
No, not a change in policy. A policy works for a corporation. It's to get the whole corporation to kowtow to its mission statement and its purpose. In other words, what you're doing is you're blowing the whistle on fraud. I cringe a lot when the word fraud comes up, because I know the only way the court can deal with it is to bury it with their ownership of intellectual property of the entire process of the whole court proceeding, because they're saying we're putting on a show and you've agreed to come to the show, and here's our policies. Once you've come to the show, you have to follow X, Y, and Z. So I'm not talking about changing a policy. I'm talking about a radical, fundamental reevaluation of the whole process. And in this case, you, particularly as a producer of 41 years, has the standing to say, Dan, you work for me. And you haven't been working for me or any of the others, if you're thinking that that's too selfish to say just me, Joe Friendly, but you as a representative of a free voice, not a vanity producer, simply a free voice.
Can I jump in here for a minute?
Yeah, go.
Okay, let me just clarify, because we were talking earlier in the day. MNN is a nonprofit, and a nonprofit has a duty. Its CEO and its board has a duty of loyalty. They have a duty of obedience, and they have a duty of loyalty, duty of obedience, a duty of care. And specifically, the duty of obedience is towards the mission statement. The mission statement is the reason why the organization exists, and that's why it has been granted legal status as a not-for-profit by the state. Oh, there's your state actor, and a tax exemption by the IRS. So Dan Coughlin is not stupid. He knows what his mission statement is, and when he intentionally, deliberately, knowingly, willfully, with malice aforethought, violates the mission statement, then he deserves, at the very least, to be fired. I don't feel sorry for him. He made a conscious commitment to act in violation of the mission statement, which is the very reason why the organization exists. And if DeeDee Halleck had, some more gumption, and if Gail Brewer did, they should convene, Gail Brewer particularly, she's the Manhattan Borough President, she sits ex fact as a non-voting member of the board of MNN, and she appoints two people with unlimited terms to the board of MNN, and those three people should immediately convene an emergency meeting of the board and say, excuse me, our CEO and the staff, Corey Bryce and
Jeanette Santiago,
and Jeanette Santiago, and as yet unnamed and as yet unindicted co-conspirator Greg Sutton, should all be fired and replaced immediately. Now, you can't tell me that there isn't enough talent out there and that there isn't enough people of good moral character who'd be wonderful at MNN, because I see them all the time, and Dan Coughlin fires them.
Let me jump in. If we should lose our court case there or up here in Woodstock, my plan B is to go to the IRS and say, especially down there, this was a non-for-profit, and they've been making money by renting out the studio, and have they filed taxes on the money, on the profits that they've made? And
you would also want to inform, and this I can help
Let me
you
finish. Okay. That in itself, if the IRS looked into it, could land Coughlin in jail for IRS fraud, tax fraud.
And the U.S. attorney, there's a statute that says the U.S. attorney is charged by law with collecting all revenues that are owed to the government. So there's no excuse for the federal prosecutor up in Woodstock to say, oh, no, I want to get involved, because you're bound by statute.
Well, that's my plan B up here in Woodstock. I prefer to get the town board to do the right thing. We're trying to get them to do the right thing. And if they don't do the right thing, then we'll take them into federal court.
Then you stick another criminal organization on them.
And then we'll take them in. Then we'll take them into federal court. And if federal court don't work, then we'll sig the IRS on them. So
well, here's the other thing you can do. You can stick the state on them, and this isn't a really good time to do it, because remember, it's the state that granted the legal status as a non-profit, right?
Right.
So right now, I hate to blow my own horn, but I'm about to do it, so I apologize for being a vanity producer. but right now, I mean, I already have the admissions of guilt. I mean, there was a non-vanity producer who already signed an affidavit that said that, in my case, he went to a meet and greet, and Greg Sutton, as yet unnamed co-conspirator and co-defendant. Right now, there's a big brouhaha with a federal court case with DeeDee Halleck in federal court, the Southern District of New York.
That we're all involved in, too. You and Dean and Paula and me.
So this is all, we're the vanguard, because we're trying to preserve public access so we can have these diverse voices, whether we agree with them or not. So that's what a vibrant representative republic is supposed to have. All these vibrant voices, speaking. So the important thing here is, right now in my case, Greg Sutton went to one of my regular co-hosts and producers and said, "Don't appear on Lydia Radin's show." Well, the mission is to provide for the free speech of people who live in Manhattan. So when you go to somebody and say, "Don't appear on her show," you've just violated the mission statement. Well, for that alone, you can get these people fired. And then on a deeper level, the mission of MNN is not to violate the fair hearing rights, or the civil rights, or the due process rights, or the equal protection rights, or the redress rights of producers. And the city of New York, as a corporation, is incorporated only to the limits of the United States Constitution, and it cannot have a relationship with another corporate entity, another corporate person, that's going to drag it into constitutional violations for which the U.S. prosecutor must prosecute. So we go down to the Southern District of New York and we shove it in Preet Bharara's face, and he must do something. If he doesn't, then that means he can prosecute no one because he comes to court with unclean hands. In my case, he comes to court with blood on his hands, my blood, literally.
Right.
Meanwhile, one question, guys. Did MNN fail to produce information that it is legally obligated to provide to the public, like its financial statement? As I understand it, it does not make public what it's supposed to make public about its finances?
Same thing in Woodstock. Yeah, it's supposed to make it public.
Well, and the other thing you can probably get them for is if the DeeDee Halleck case progresses, is under Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 26, they're supposed to disclose. So if you're in a federal lawsuit and the other side is not, obeying the rules, and they're not fully disclosing, you're not supposed to keep litigating. You're supposed to say, okay, that's it. The court has lost jurisdiction. It's lost its power to act. I mean, these rules were put in place by acts of Congress. We just don't ignore them. Oh, Congress passed a law, we'll ignore it. This is another issue I had with the presiding judge, Judge Pauly, because Judge Pauly has just made up his own rules. He's fabricated his own little individual practices. He's legislating from the bench. We should be calling the House Judiciary Committee because apparently all these judges think, well, we'll just make things up. They're legislating from the bench. You're not supposed to suspend the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and then Judge Pauly comes in and says, well, I'm going to suspend all the deadlines. We're not going to pay attention to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. You're going to do my individual practices for a while, and then when I decide, we'll go back to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Excuse me? And all the attorneys are colluding in this because they don't want to ruffle the federal feathers of the big important federal judge. The big important federal judge is not supposed to be doing this. He's legislating from the bench.
Violating the law.
Exactly. At this point in time, DeeDee Halleck's attorney, Mr. Perry, he's not supposed to be a patsy. He's supposed to be a vigorous advocate. He should be down there saying, this is one of the reasons I got beaten up last week. He's supposed to be, when I went down on January 28th with Dean Loren to listen in on the hearing, he's supposed to be saying, they're having a pre-motion conference to discuss a proposed motion to intervene. I'm like, to discuss proposed motion to dismiss. I'm like, pardon me, sir. You don't have pre-motion conferences to discuss a proposed motion to dismiss. If the other side wants to dismiss, they make a motion.
In all my years of fighting court cases, I have never heard of what you're talking about. Never in any court case, and I've had plenty of them.
Well, even better, Google the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Where does it say, oh, these are the rules of civil procedure? You file a complaint, the other side's supposed to file an answer. An answer is supposed to say specifically, yes, no, or I don't know, to each and every numbered paragraph in the complaint. If they want to weasel out of making an answer, because, they don't want to be obligated in any way, right? All of this is to try to create, we're litigating without the consequences of litigating. That's what they're doing. So if you don't want to file an answer, the other sneaky, weaselly way out is to file a motion, Rule 12b-6, 12b motion, saying, failure to state a claim. And then you file your motion that says there's a motion to dismiss failure to state a claim, and then you write out your reasons for the judge, and you go from there. You don't come to court and have a pre-motion conference to discuss the proposed motion. That's called barratry. You're making up ridiculous reasons to have even more court procedures to waste people's time and to waste the judge's time and stuff that you don't really need to do. But I'm sure, in the saving grace, that the private attorneys for Greg, for Dan Coughlin and the MNN attorneys, I'm sure he's going to bill them for it. So that we're getting poetic justice, because I'm sure they're going to stick it to those private clients. That really, two wrongs don't make a right.
Lydia, we have to break for station ID.
Okay.
Station ID.
The venerable station ID is WIOF LP Woodstock 104, and it's the Pot Talk program with Joe Barton and Paula Gloria.
Go ahead, Lydia.
So